Hey, this is a follow-up to the first Boards of Canada video I did yesterday, which was looking at their albums, some of which I own were secondhand. This is looking at the three EPs that I own of theirs. Um, Unfortunately, breaking with the point and purpose of this channel, these are not secondhand. These are all new. I bought all of these new. As I was saying yesterday, that the likelihood of finding secondhand, and when I say secondhand, I should always qualify this. In a secondhand music shop, you can find these things, but in a secondhand shop, is which the places I do the majority of my buying, just secondhand charity shops. The likelihood of finding anything by Boards of Canada is very, very low, which is why I was so elated and overjoyed to find two of their albums last year, which I showed yesterday. Anyway, they have five EPs, or at least five, I should say, acknowledged EPs. I have three of them. Okay, the earliest one, at least produced earliest, is this one here called Tourism. This was originally unofficially released in '95 and then officially released in 2002. This is obviously the 2002 version. That shot on the front is from a 1980 sci-fi movie. What's it called? Murders at Outpost Zeta, or something like that. I've watched clips of the film. There's actually a video on YouTube that which song is it? Anyway, one of the Boards of Canada songs. They kind of someone's put it together with scenes from the movie. It's done quite well actually. So this is some of the earlier work. 69er, Tourism. You can see some of these are also on Music Has the Rights to Children, Smoke's Quality. So it says all tracks written, produced, recorded by Boards of Canada, recorded summer of '95 at Hexagon Sun. So the Hexagon Sun is a kind of, I don't know what it is. I've heard it described as it's their recording studio, but it's also like a collective, like an art collective. Originally released in '95 on Music 70 Records. So Music 70 was their first record label. Very, very small record label, I believe, and almost always self-funded. Then they signed with Scam for High Scores, which is the EP that came out in '96, which I don't have, and I think also for Aquarius in '98, which I don't have. And then they, somewhere along the line, they signed with Warp Records. And I've talked about Warp Records before, is saying that if I see an album in a shop, I mean in a secondhand charity shop, and I see an album that's got the Warp Records label on it, I will buy that record regardless if I've heard of the band or not, because they have such a they're one of those record company labels that just puts out quality stuff, and so I'm willing to always take a risk on something by Warp. Not that you see a lot of their stuff out and about anyway, but next is this one here from 2000. It's called In a Beautiful Place Out in the Country. And these are kind of like stills taken from, like, I think that's like a nature documentary. I don't know what the other ones are from. Some other ones inside as well. It looks like a nature documentary as well, which is something that's kind of a reoccurring theme in a lot of their work. This has only got 4 tracks. Kid for Today, Amo Bishop Rodin, In a Beautiful Place Out in the Country, and Zoetrope. Those first 3 in particular are, I don't know. This EP is as good as any other. It's only short. It's only four songs long, but it's from beginning to end, pure quality, pure brilliance. When I see those names, I see Kid for Today. I think, oh, that's one of my favorite songs. But I could say that about like any of their songs. It really is impossible to kind of pick out particular high points, because they're all high. And then their last EP, most recent one, was from 2006. So that's going on 14, 15, 17 years. That's Trans Canada Highway. You can see this is cracked. I bought both of these at JB Hi-Fi. Well, actually, my wife bought this to me for one of my birthdays before we were married. I bought this at JB Hi-Fi, which is an Australian electronics chain that has a ever decreasing music section. They used to actually stock some pretty rare stuff, like Boards of Canada, and you could make some decent finds there. Things weren't particularly cheap or anything, but it's their CD section at that place is getting smaller every time I visit. Their vinyl section's increasing, but overall the music section is shrinking. Anyway, this one I ordered online, got on Amazon, sent to me when I was living overseas. And this is also, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 songs long. Dave and Cowboy, which we talked about yesterday, is taken from Campfire Head Phase, and the last song is a remix of Dave and Cowboy. Then we've got Left Side Dry, brilliant. Heard from the Telegraph Lines and Under the Coke Sign are both pretty short songs. They're less than 2 minutes. They're almost kind of like little snippets. Like they have these in a lot of the albums they have, especially in I think in Music Has the Right to Children, they have these little, I don't even know what you call them, like little pieces. They feel like kind of like, it's almost like you're coming in the middle of a song and you're not hearing the full thing, but that's what they are. And then we've got Skyliner, which is another brilliant song. A little bit different from this era, because this came out in 2006, which was between Campfire Headfires and Tomorrow's Harvest. I feel that Skyliner sounds a little bit earlier. It sounds almost like kind of tourism era, like the mid 90s type thing. But yeah, again, absolutely brilliant. So those are the 3 EPs I own, as well as the albums I showed yesterday. I touched a little bit on yesterday, saying that there's kind of like a lot of like mystery and almost like lore, 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 around this band, where like if you go on YouTube and you search Boards of Canada, there will be a lot of things that come up. A lot of songs will come up, or even groups of songs that aren't on any of the albums, their official releases. For example, I guess some of the most famous ones are the Old Tunes, Volume 1 and 2. I don't know if they've actually ever officially acknowledged that that is their work. So in their early career, before, Tourism, I guess was their first earliest release, they made albums in the early 90s, late 80s, but they made them on like 50 or 100 copies, and they only gave them out to friends and family. And so there are these works by them out there floating around that are suggested to exist, but no one knows for sure. And like I said, the band themselves don't really answer questions or give interviews, especially nowadays. So it's hard to know what's what. So if you search Old Tunes Volume 1 or Old Tunes Volume 2, you'll find it's about, I can't remember how long it is, 40 or 50 minutes. And apparently they made this in wherever it was, like in the mid 90s, and it was just given out to their friends and families. But then in the early 2000s, MP3, on like file sharing services, MP3s would show up of, this is Boards of Canada, blah blah blah, rarity or something, and then it would everyone would say, well, is this real, or is this fake? Because there are a lot of bands out there who mimic these guys and write music in a very similar way, but they aren't them. So it's hard to really know what is what. But apparently with some of these ones that you find, what are some of the other ones? There's Hooper Bay. There's only a little bit of that on YouTube, and it sounds kind of creepy. Play by Numbers, Acid Memories. Some of these are really old, from like even like the late 80s. People have, what they do is they've sampled them in their music as a way to see if Boards of Canada, the band or their record label, does a copyright infringement against them. And if they do, that would tell you that that is a Boards of Canada, legitimate recording. Or if they don't, then they don't give a shit because it's not their music. Do you know what I mean? And I think apparently they have done that. Like I think the old tunes volume, they did claim, like they got in contact with the person who sampled it or tried to sell it or whatever they did, and said, yeah, can you not do that? This is ours. We don't want you to do that. But I would, man, because old tunes is brilliant. It's even if it's not Boards of Canada, it's whoever made it. It's amazing. And there's this like these little like snippets of songs. There are some full songs like 5.978, 5.9.78, and what's the other one? Finity, and a bunch of others. Then there's other like ones that only last like 30 or 40 seconds or a minute and a half. And it's just all sorts of stuff. That's right, Muckenbach. That someone actually made a video of that on YouTube with this animated dog. What are some of the other good ones? Staircase Whip, that's a brilliant one. And then the very last one, Powerline Misfortune. That's on Old Tunes Volume 2. It's like such a sad, silent sounding song. If you just search for that, Powerline Misfortune, Boards of Canada on YouTube, and you can listen to it. It's like this really mournful, weird, sad song. So I'm raving and ranting a little bit here because I'm kind of just wanted to fill in that little gap. They also had some loops on their website in the early 2000s. I think they also wrote some music for an Italian telephone company, like a little like jingle almost. So there's all sorts of stuff out there, and it's hard to know what is theirs 100% and what isn't, and some of it's just like pretending to be theirs. And but like I was saying yesterday, they haven't released anything now for 10 years. They did the most recent thing they did is they did a remix. What was the name of it? Hang on a second. Treat 'Em Right. That's right. Treat 'Em Right. Remix the Neverman song. That's quite cool. I like the song even just without the remix. They also did a Beck remix, but that was ages ago. So they've done bits and pieces. They also, on the I think it was the 30th anniversary of Warp Records, they would all different Warp artists did kind of like almost like a DJ session on this radio, kind of like online radio streaming thing. Not really a DJ session. They basically played music for 2 hours. And Boards of Canada did one. You can find that on online on YouTube. It's called the Societist Tape or something like that. And they've just putting some old music they like, kind of stuff from the 70s and 80s, like kind of old prog and old electronic music. And there's also bits and pieces in there that sounds like it's their music as well that I've never heard before, like unreleased stuff that they've kind of added in there. It's just there's a whole world out there. And if you do some digging, if you're really into their music, there's things you can find, but you can never be 100% it's theirs. Things that pretty certain it is theirs. But it's quite fun to kind of go through the things and see all the different things out there, and all the websites and the forums of people kind of claiming things. And often what I was saying yesterday, they don't have a social media presence really, but they do have I think they've got a Twitter and a Instagram and stuff, but they don't really use it. But sometimes they will like things with their Twitter. So there are a lot of fan-made videos online because they don't really make a lot of videos themselves. They've made a few, but not many. And so say they'll take a random song like Turquoise Hexagon Sun, and there's one particular really good video for that on YouTube. It's quite old now, it's about 10 or 12 years old. And every now and then, Boards of Canada someone will like a post of that video. And that kind of, so you're kind of like, okay, wow, they've seen that and they acknowledge it and they like it. Wow, So that it's like they're kind of, I'm not trying to suggest that they're doing this on purpose, but it's like they're cultivating a certain mystique around themselves. And maybe they're not interested in the fame thing in any way whatsoever. It's not like Daft Punk, who kind of almost played into it with the masks and the bits and pieces they did. These guys kind of legitimately seem to not want to have anything to do with any kind of press or fame in any sort of way whatsoever. Just to finish off, I thought I'd read a couple of descriptions of their music, because I feel that these writers do them a lot better service than I ever could in their description. So this is a critic called Simon Reynolds. Um, he described their music as hazy sound of smeared synth tones and analog decayed production, carried by patient sleepwalking beats and aching with nostalgia, which I feel really encapsulates it. Another one is evocative, mournful, sample-laden, down-tempo music, often sounding as though produced on malfunctioning equipment excavated from the ruins of an early 70s computer lab. So I often think, like, the people who really connect to this music, people from that kind of, who grew up in the 70s and the 80s, who are children of that period. But then sometimes I see like young kids, like, teenagers who were born in the year 2000, and they talk about the same nostalgia feel that they get when they listen to it. So it's kind of this universal thing, it seems. And the last one, if I can find it, um, this one's by Adam Harper, and he described their work as simultaneous Arcadian and sinister musical hauntology based on cut-up samples, vintage synthesizer technology, and faded modernism arising from mid-20th century television, science, public education, childhood, and spirituality, which I think that really captures it as well. All those things together, because they use samples of that kind of public education TV. Boards of Canada actually comes from the film Boards of Canada. They're Scottish, but they lived in Canada for a period in their childhood. And they said they have these memories of watching these documentaries when they went to school in Canada that were produced by the Film Board of Canada, which is like a government agency that obviously produces educational films for children. At least they did so in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. But I remember those when I was a kid as well. Those kind of like slightly weird public education things you used to see in school. A lot of them were kind of like about 20 years out of date by the time you saw them. I don't know what it's like. I guess it's just schools change so much now that I probably they don't that kind of thing doesn't exist. But it seemed like education in general when I was at school. I went to school mostly in the late 80s and through the 90s. And everything we were given at school and consumed, like, the books and the movies they showed us and the little documentaries and even the materials we had to use in class, the textbooks, all seem to come from like the early 70s. They are like kind of like 20 years out of date, because, government funding for schools isn't always as what it might be. Um, but yeah, maybe that's a part of why they connect with people, but it's much more than that. It's not just, connecting to a certain memory that people share. It's the music just by itself is just so, I don't know, resonant in so many ways. So these last two videos, this one and the one from yesterday, around 20 minutes each, and it's just basically me blabbing how much I love this band, but I can't really emphasize any more than that. That they are a band that, if I had to name the top 5 most important bands in my life and bands that have influenced me, and music has influenced me in so many ways in my life, more than any other kind of art form, movies, television, other kind of visual media, literature. By far, music has had the deepest impact on me in my life from childhood to now. And if I had to pick out 5 bands, not even necessarily my favorite bands, although a lot of them would be, but that had the deepest impact and scarred my DNA, these guys would easily be in that list. So I would just say check them out. Give them a listen if you haven't done. I can't imagine someone listening to these guys and not getting something out of it, because they really are brilliant. So thank you for watching my 20-minute plus 20-minute ramble on this band. But yeah, have a nice day. Take care. Boards of Canada.